The NBA playoff race is heating up. Can the Bucks manage to recover? Because it's getting yikesy in Milwaukee. Who gets the 1 seed in the Western Conference? And is it possible that Karl-Anthony Towns' return could be around the corner? Plus, could an NBA coach be headed back to college? Plus, we'll talk about our sleeper teams for the NBA playoffs. All that and more here on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day, and being with us every day, Monday through Friday. Appreciate you guys being in every day or hanging out with us, no matter what show you prefer, whether it's myself, Matt Moore, and David Ramil, or if you like Nick Angstadt and Pat the Designer, or Jake Madison, John Corrales, or Wes Goldberg and Adam Mares. We appreciate you guys making us part of your day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Like I said, my name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and I'm co-host of Locked On Nuggets. I'm joined by David Ramil. He's co-host of Locked On Heat. We were both in the throes of NBA playoff preparation, more assuredly for my show than his, but still a lot of chances for Miami, a lot of confidence from what I hear about Miami getting into the playoffs some way or another. Not from you. Wes Goldberg was like, I still think they're getting the 6th seed. And I was like, oh, it's bold. Make sure to check out Locked On Heat as they sweat this remaining week before the NBA play-in tournament or playoffs if they manage to get a break with the Indiana Pacers. On today's show, we'll talk about the NBA playoff picture. We'll go over, most especially the Eastern Conference, how crazy that's gotten, especially with the Milwaukee Bucks just falling off of a cliff. We'll talk about, in the second segment, the Western Conference race for the 1 seed, who's going to wind up between the Wolves, the Nuggets, and the Thunder. Plus, Karl-Anthony Towns might be coming back sooner than we think. Plus, in the final segment, there's an NBA coach that might consider a departure back to college. Plus, we'll talk about some NBA sleeper teams for the playoffs here on Locked On NBA. Jam-packed show for you today. David, let's start with this. Oh boy, the Bucks. So the Bucks have they lose 3 in a row to dismal teams. They lose a back-to-back to sub 500 teams. That's bad. They lose to Memphis. That's bad. They lose to Raptors. That's bad. They've got a lead versus the Knicks, and it seems like, oh, okay, so like they decided to try, and they're gonna get this thing back under control. Nope. They lose to the Knicks, and they get absolutely eviscerated in the second half. The Knicks, who are shorthanded and exhausted, ran them out of the building. I forget what the final count was second half, but it was something like 47-28. It was a beatdown by the Knicks. That game ran away from Milwaukee very quickly. Doc Rivers has blamed the players, the equipment staff, the pilots. He's blamed the fall of Rome. He's blamed the Big Bang. Like we're running out of people. He's going to blame you and me here. Like we're next on the blame train.
Undoubtedly.
For Doc Rivers. I think your perspective is particularly interesting as somebody that covers a team that's knocked out Milwaukee twice. And could very easily wind up in a 2-7 matchup with the Milwaukee Bucks or potentially a 3-6. What is your perception of how bad this is? How much should Bucks fans be panicking about this Bucks tail off?
I mean, it looks really bad. Like you just hear about it, the constant, dysfunction, and Doc makes things so much worse. Like he's got such a okay reputation. I can't even say good reputation, but he's got such a decent reputation in terms of being a head coach and things of that sort. And that's why you make that move with the idea that things will turn around. He'll get the ship righted. And for a while, it seemed like that was the case. But then the constant, I'm not the problem, somebody else is the problem, that just looks bad. That just really, it's discouraging as a fan. It's discouraging to the players to not have that kind of acceptance and accountability from your head coach. And it's a clear lack of communication too, because I don't think anybody is very clear on what's happening with the team or why there's a lack of leadership and why Doc seems to throw everybody under the bus and is unwilling to accept that blame himself. So I think it looks pretty dire. At the same time, I have to be optimistic that, I don't know, that recover or turn things around is the right way of looking at it. But I still think they can win. I think any chance of them competing for a title is probably done, at least this season. But I still think they could be a decent team in the playoffs. I'm just not encouraged by it. And we've seen teams kind of waddle into the playoffs the same way this Bucks team seems to be doing, and flip a switch, turn things around. I think they still have the talent, they still have the personnel, they still have the experience, the knowledge of what it takes to win a championship. And given that, I think that they'll still be a fairly good team. I think they can still get past the Miami. They can still get past the lower seed. You know, now let's say this: the way the Sixers are playing and with their personnel and Joel Embiid back on the line in the lineup, I think they'd be probably favored to knock out the Bucks, despite Giannis and everything else that he's able to accomplish, especially with the level of dysfunction that we're currently seeing.
So there's only a number of teams that the Bucks can face first round. The most likely is obviously the Sixers and the Heat after the Pacers won and got tiebreaker yesterday and then went over Miami. They can face Philly, Miami, the Sixers. They can actually face the Cavs. Like, the Cavs would already be number 2 if they hadn't simultaneously fallen off. And actually, in the last 15 games, Cleveland's been worse from a net rating perspective. They've had more injuries than Milwaukee.
Sure.
In a West Coast road trip. But nonetheless, like, the Cavs had a golden opportunity and let it slide. Like, there is a, not even non-zero, there's a decent chance that the Orlando Magic are your 2 seed in the Western Conference, in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. I was wrong last week when you asked me about the Eastern Conference play-in standings. I thought Orlando would fall off, and somehow everybody else seems to be crapping the bed simultaneously, and Orlando's just like, well, we'll keep winning if nobody else is interested in doing it.
We'll just keep rolling. The tiebreaker situation is also interesting because, okay, so the Bucks lose tiebreaker to the Cavs and the Pacers. Pacers, they would have to win out, and Cavs would have to lose out, essentially. I think they have like one game they could win. Otherwise, it's done. They can't catch them. They do lose tiebreaker. Milwaukee plays Orlando twice this week. That's 1-1 in season series tiebreaker. Like, Orlando has a chance to overtake them for 2 and secure tiebreaker, which is a big friggin' deal. Here's another one for you. If the Cavs do manage to get their stuff together and they actually stabilize here in the last 4 games, if they wind up in a 3-way tie with the Bucks, the Magic, and the Cavs, the first thing you do in a multi-team tiebreaker is you separate out the division winners. Orlando goes ahead, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, thanks to division record, thanks specifically to the Bucks losing to the Pacers in the play-in tournament semifinal. I'm not kidding. That game would be the difference between them pushing to another tiebreaker. The Cavs would get it. If it's a 3-way tie for 2, 3, 4, if the Knicks fall off, if it's 2, 3, 4, Bucks, Cavs, Magic, Cavs fall to 4. All the way to 4. Or Bucks fall all the way to 4. That's crazy. There's a lot to kind of be determined here. There's a lot to try and figure out. I am always of the opinion that things are never as bad or as good as they seem in the NBA regular season. I'm also a big fan that, like, these games don't matter, right? Like, I've talked about that a lot. Like, they matter, they count, but they're not real. Like, all of this is very wonky. So, like, part of me wants to go contrarian and be like, you know what? The Bucks have one of the best net ratings versus the other Eastern Conference teams. I also was doing a lot of lineup data this weekend, and like, all of the lineup stuff says if Milwaukee just doesn't play its bench, they're going to be fine. If they just go to a shortened rotation, the question is going to be, my question with that is, like, all of those things to me go out the window if you play Miami. Like, they go out the window because the Heat are practitioners of the dark arts. So, like, I don't care about, like, all of the logic involved. It's gonna be fascinating to see. You got any final thoughts on Bucks?
Is there any matchup that you would favor the Bucks in right now? Because with the free fall and everything else, do you think that they're done, and do you think that they have a chance of being able to get past any of the lower seeds or the teams that are currently beneath them in the standings, but might eclipse them by later this week?
They still need to be favored versus the Pacers, though I'm going to like the Pacers. They still need to be favored versus the Knicks, though I'm really going to like the Knicks. I think they would actually probably jump up and down on the Cavs with how messy the Cavs are right now. I just don't think the Cavs are healthy enough to push them. Sixers and Heat are ironically the most terrifying, and they're in the 7 and 8 spot. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look, logic
Maybe
says
they're doing this on purpose. Maybe they're doing this on purpose. Are they tanking on purpose so they can get the 4th seed and be
stay
able
out
to
of Miami's way. Don't have to face the Jimmy Butler voodoo. Up next, we'll flip to the other conference. The Western Conference playoff race at the top is brutal. We'll talk about who's going to get the 1 seed. And guess what? Karl Anthony Towns might be back real soon. We'll do that next here on Locked On NBA. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. The intuitive part, I think, is really important here. You don't need to be complicated and stressed out trying to sort through a job board. You want to be able to just go through this process and focus on the candidates, because that to me is where hiring goes wrong, is when you're so involved with trying to deal with the administrative part of hiring that you don't wind up actually being able to look at the candidates appropriately. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidate within the first 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Matt Moore alongside David Ramil. We're recording this early on a Monday because there are no games, because 2 groups of children are getting together to miss jumpers on Monday night. However, we will be back with you in case news happens. These teams are actually better. The UConn's pretty close to, like, UConn's like a G League team. Like they're that level. They wouldn't beat any NBA team, but they have a lot of professional talent on there. By the way, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Won't be any discussion on Locked On NBA of can the UConn Huskies beat an NBA team. Let's talk about the Western Conference. The Timberwolves and Nuggets are tied at the top of the Western Conference. The Timberwolves have tiebreaker thanks to division record. They play on Wednesday. Denver has a back-to-back in this spot. They play Utah in Utah on Tuesday night, then fly back home for a game versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's not for all the marbles, but it's for like a lot of marbles. There's a great deal of marbles involved in that one. Additionally, if the Thunder are able to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander back now that they're back off the East Coast road trip, and they go ahead and they win out, and the Nuggets lose to the Wolves, Denver will fall all the way to 3rd. I personally am of the opinion that the actual sweet spot in the Western Conference playoffs is probably the 2 seed. I think that's a pretty good spot. You will not have to face LeBron, AD, and the Lakers, who made the Western Conference Finals last year. You will wind up most likely with one of either the Pelicans, the Suns, maybe the Kings. It's slightly possible that the Lakers could sneak in there, but I think the 2 seed is there. Obviously, having Western Conference Finals home court advantage is a big deal for Minnesota and Denver. Minnesota's got to answer a lot of questions before we get there. My question for you, David, is Denver has been pretty banged up. Jamal Murray just came back off of injury. Aaron Gordon missed the last game with an injury. How much do you think Denver should push for the 1 seed in the Western Conference in terms of playing guys or resting guys ahead of the NBA playoffs?
I think the way that I see this team built and the way that they operate, and you know this better than anybody, I just think that they're capable and confident enough where ultimately their season and how deep it goes depends on their health of their players. Other than that, I don't think they're stoppable. I don't think anybody can beat them, really. As good as Minnesota's been, as good as some of these other teams, even at the lower end of the Western Conference standings are, I think it's Denver's title to lose. And given that, I think your priority should be to keep everybody as healthy as possible, to give them the rest necessary, because then once the playoffs start, you're not going to get that luxury. You're not going to get those opportunities. Yes, you could theoretically sweep a team and then maybe get an extended break in between series, but even that's not really significant enough. You're still going to be banged up. It's towards the end of the season. Be a healthy team. It made a difference in the playoffs last year. It will make a difference in this year's playoffs as well. It's always a difference maker. And so I think that's their top priority. Having the first seed is great. Obviously, you have a home court advantage in Denver, but all these teams on the top three are good at home. They all have very similar records at home. Denver's is slightly better, but that's expected considering the mile high attitude and everything else like that. So to me, being healthy is better than rushing them out there and perhaps aggravating an injury that could take out or hinder your chances moving forward.
Wolves have Wizards. That's a win. Then the Nuggets on the back-to-back. They also have a back-to-back. So Denver has an away home back-to-back. Wolves have home away. Then the Wolves have the Atlanta Hawks. Let's count that at home. That's a win. And they close with the Suns at home. Suns will probably be locked in by then. That's one of those games where if Minnesota really needs it, they can probably get it. As a kind of an aside, I wanted to ask you this question. It is so dunks and threes and Basketball Reference both have playoff probabilities based off of the expected outcomes of the games. And that can change dramatically if somebody upsets or loses. And that's what happens a lot this time of year. But I will just say that the Clippers are 99.4% to be in the 4-5. Dallas is 97% to be in the 4-5. We are at I'm calling it a lock now. We're going to get Clippers Mavericks first round. We will have lots of time next week on the show to start previewing those series, but I did want to get your sense of what your first kind of gut instinct is to a Clippers Mavericks round 3 between those two teams.
Like in terms of who's the final winner, or just in general? Because I'm excited about seeing the matchups. I think it's going to be a great series. Yeah. So that's for me. It's like there's no personal investment in it. It's not the team I cover. So to me, I become much more of a fan during the playoffs, especially about the Western Conference and how it all shapes up. I'm just watching the names. I'm watching the players stand out. I'm watching who rises to the occasion. Those are the things I'm looking for, as opposed to even trying to put my quote unquote analyst hat or even a media member's hat. I just kind of enjoy the Western Conference and seeing it play out. So that is what I'm most excited about. I don't have a sense of who would win that series because I think both teams have their various strengths and weaknesses. If I had to go right now, I'd probably pick whichever team winds up with home court advantage. I think in this series it probably might make a bigger difference than in the others that we were just talking about. So if the Dallas winds up at the 4 seed, I think they could probably win the series. Otherwise, I can go give the Clippers a nod. What about you? Do you have a sense of it?
I'm starting to dive into the matchups. I think Kyrie Irving's going to be a big part of this series.
Sure.
I think that they can throw enough bodies to at least wear down Luka. Luka's great versus the Clippers. He's had phenomenal series. He's also 0-2. Kyrie's playing at a really high level. He won Western Conference Player of the Week, by the way. He's been terrific lately for them. He's really dangerous. But I will say a lot of it with the Mavericks is they finally have rim runners. They can go big. And with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, the problem though is I think the Clippers probably want that. The Clippers don't want you to space them out 1-5 because they want to be able to go small and switch everything. And then be hey, Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford are going to have to make post-up shots in order to punish this. That puts them in a little bit of a better situation. I think it's going to be a heck of a series. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. This is, Jason Kidd versus Ty Lue. I'll give the advantage to Ty Lue. Luka is the best player in the series, but Kawhi is not far off. I would give PG second billing. He was phenomenal yesterday. Kyrie's not far off from him. James Harden, still a very dangerous player. The thing with the Clippers is they have 3 guys that any night they can be the best player on the floor. The Mavs have the guy that every night you're going to think he's the best player on the floor coming in. He should be considered the best player on the floor coming in. Mavs defense has been better. Clippers have tailed off, but I don't pay, I've talked about on the show, I don't pay a lot of attention or put too much stock into how you play in March and April. I'm not overly worried about the Clippers. It's going to be, I think, a really fascinating series. Man, these playoffs are going to be something else, especially in the Western Conference. On the other side, we'll talk a little bit about some news in college, actually, and how that could affect the NBA. Plus, David and I will talk about some sleeper teams we think that could surprise in the NBA playoffs. All that and more up next on Locked On NBA. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my favorite app for buying tickets. That sounds like something that's in a script. I just said that, and that is genuinely what I do. My wife always wants to go catch Avalanche games this time of year. She's a huge hockey fan. Best way to do it is we'll just be like, hey, you want to go see a hockey game tonight? Yes, we'll go into the city, and we got Game Time tickets right up to the start of the game, and we get them for great prices. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Here's a sneaky thing for you with baseball, because baseball to me is mostly about being in the park and enjoying a nice day. If you wait until after, you can get absolutely premium tickets on Game Time for just a fraction of it. Just wait until after first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You get to save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And you can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. You also get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. So you know that you're not going to get stuck behind a column if you're going to a concert. You know you're not going to have a bad sight line if you're at a game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Final segment for you here on Tuesday on Locked On NBA as the NBA resumes action tonight with every team in the universe playing. We just have a lot of games. There's just a ton of games. We don't play any games on Monday and any games on Saturday. And so it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. These 5 days are just going to be packed with teams finishing out the regular season. So on Sunday night, go ahead, Dave. What you got?
No, I was going to say, do you feel like there's more at stake in this final week of the regular season than it has been in years past? Because I know the push towards parity and everything else is something that people have talked about. And you've got the Eastern Conference race, which is so tightly contested in the 2 through 8 spots. But do you feel like there's more at stake here? Because I know there's always, to some degree, a team that's fighting for some seeding or trying to get into the play-in tournament or something along those lines. But it just feels like almost every game over the next few days has some major playoff significance.
It's true. So there are 15 of 16 spots still not determined. The Boston Celtics in the 1 spot are the only seed that's set with a week to go. That's rare. I will say that part of the problem, and I always kind of get back to this, is like the scheduling committee, because it's so complicated. Like the Charlotte, like why do we have games with the Charlotte Hornets playing real teams? Why are the Washington, why are the Wolves playing wouldn't you rather see these teams just have to face each other and gotta win this in order to get, because the big games are huge. Like that Pacers Heat game yesterday was phenomenal. Like Pacers got off to such a big lead. Heat clawed their way back into it like they always do, crawling out of the grave only to come up short. You know who's really good in that game?
Nikola Jovic.
He was really good in that game. He was so good. That's my obligatory Jovic mention of the week. Elsewhere on Sunday night, this is some college news. So John Calipari leaves Kentucky for Arkansas. Writing was on the wall. He had kind of grown tired of the lack of support as Kentucky boosters got very frustrated with the lack of NCAA tournament success for Calipari, especially since the NIL season or NIL stuff started. So Calipari leaves Kentucky, which leaves a high profile program with a lot of professional connections to it available. And there's been a lot of speculation that with Billy Donovan and the Chicago Bulls winding down their season, whether Donovan, who won 2 national titles at Florida, might consider the Kentucky job. I think it's an interesting kind of scenario just built off of the idea that I don't know that I think Donovan was really great with OKC. And if you dive deep into what he did with Chicago, the Bulls are wildly underwhelming in terms of their overall profile. But if you look at their talent level and the way that they play, Billy Donovan is a great coach. That's always whenever I dive deep on this stuff, I'm they know what they're doing. They're organized. They're structured. The defense is always better than expected. Like they should not be anywhere near the play-in tournament, and yet here they are. They lost Zach LaVine for the entire season. That's like $45 million salary or whatever. They're still in the play-in tournament, and yeah, they're under 500. But I still think that he's a really good coach. Is Chicago, if Donovan were to leave for whatever reason, this is entirely hypothetical. If Donovan were to leave, would you consider the Bulls job to be an attractive one for coaches in the NBA?
Absolutely not. I think the problems with the Bulls team are beyond what the coaching has brought. I know Donovan is not a perfect coach by any stretch. He's had his limitations, but I think the biggest issues with that is mostly roster construction, and that's not on Donovan. So if you're a coach looking to have an opportunity as a coach, I think this would be ideal for a first-time head coach at the NBA level. That's like you can go in there with that kind of excitement, be like, all right, I'm have an opportunity to turn things around, to plant my my flag and be able to create an identity, everything else like that. But you're not going to have much success because they're still going to be hindered by what's going on with that roster and the money that's owed to several players that just might not be good enough.
Mostly Billy Donovan with everything he's had to deal with this Bulls team. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. Go back to Kentucky and like compete for another national title. I think Billy Donovan can do very well as an NBA coach. Now he may just not want to do it because he's coached the NBA so long. He might not want to go back, and NIL is a very different situation than he was at Florida. Oddly enough, Billy Donovan won those titles way back in like 2007, and Al Horford still rostered on the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Shout out Al Horford. Let's talk about some sleeper teams, because I think that this is very interesting. I'm going to say this up front. I do not blame you if you take Miami here. This is not you being Homer if you take Miami. That's a perfectly legitimate answer. I have an Eastern Conference team I think that is actually a little bit of a sleeper. And for me, it's actually the team that beat the Heat yesterday. I think this Pacers team is better than what their resume shows. I watch a lot of Pacers games, and they are inconsistent, but in high leverage situations, they've done very well. And the combination of Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam with Nembhard and Nesmith, they have a lot of interchangeability and different ways to attack teams. That's one of the things I'm always looking at. If you're just like, we do the same thing over and over and over again, it gets easier to defend that over 7 games. Indiana is versatile, and I love Rick Carlisle in a playoff series. Their defense, yes, is questionable, and for certain yesterday, like he could have won that game easily. But even the ability to get out of that game at home by 1, to me, is like a step forward where I'm like, okay, they don't always lose these types of high leverage games. I actually think the Pacers are sneaky dangerous to not make they're not going to win the conference, but I do think that they're a team that people should be more aware of is a little bit more dangerous than I think the resume makes them look like.
I could see the pick. In terms of being able to beat any of the other top seeded teams in the East, I don't know if I trust the Pacers at this point yet. They're really good, and I like the point of the versatility because certainly Miami saw it yesterday, and they were beat by T.J. McConnell and Miles Turner. It wasn't Halliburton that was the dagger for that team. So they have different weapons and options and everything else. And Carlisle certainly a really, really good coach who probably doesn't get nearly enough credit at this stage in his career. But I just don't know that I trust them to be Halliburton. I think that there's still health concerns there, and I think there's still the issue about he's not going to go away, and I don't know that he's going to be as strong as he was to start the season in a 7-game series, and that's always an X factor too. So I don't know. Can they beat the Pacers? I mean, can the Pacers beat the Celtics?
No,
I don't see that. So no. I don't know. Aside from that, there's a lot of flexibility and fluctuations amongst that 2 through 8 seed. But I wouldn't trust that they're the sleeper team. If you're asking me who I think a sleeper team in the Eastern Conference is, my pick would probably be Philadelphia over Miami at this point, because I think the things I'm hearing from Jimmy Butler are not encouraging. I don't know. Obviously the playoffs, and I keep saying this, and I hate that I keep making this point, but it's like the playoffs will define who he is, because we have not seen even what we saw from him last year towards the end of the regular season. He was a much better player than he is right now. He's a little inconsistent. And I think the officiating in combination with the fact that he's just an older player, I don't know that we're going to see playoff Jimmy this year. I don't know that you're going to get out of the play-in tournament. So to be 100% honest with you. So if you're looking for another sleeper team in the Eastern Conference, I think it's Joel Embiid, who has looked much better than expected upon his return. You made the point last week that maybe they were taking his time and he was looking to just make a comeback when he was fully healthy. Well, goddamn, if he hasn't looked absolutely fully healthy, and he has just been really, really good as a shooter, and he hasn't depended on the typical Embiid flops and getting to the line and everything else like that. He's just been really dominant. And Tyrese Maxey's a damn good player. Tobias Harris, obviously he's an X factor, but I think they're good enough. Nick Nurse is a really damn good coach. I think that's a much more, to me, I trust them as a sleeper that could cause more damage, even though they're currently the 7th seed. I think they would be much more fearsome to take on in a 7-game series.
Who was the jump pass assist to late in the game by Jimmy yesterday?
I don't know.
Was it Caleb? I think it was to Caleb.
Yes, it was actually. You're right.
That to me was like a very good example of where Jimmy's at. That was almost a turnover. Like there was like, he had such a narrow opportunity, and like it looked like he was a little bit like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And because he didn't have as much lift or explosiveness as he thought he did, but he still found a way to make the pass. And it's like the Warriors are going through this right now where you reach for that stuff that you've always had and it's not there. It's still there for Jimmy, but he's having to reach so far in the bag to grab the bottom of it. It's like it's running out. In the Western Conference, man, this one's tough for me. I think everyone's going to say the Mavericks. That's going to be everybody's pick for like the sleeper team in the Western Conference, to the point where if everybody says it, I can't say that at this point, because I think everybody's going to say Dallas is super dangerous.
Right.
I actually think I will say that the Lakers at full strength. Every time I go through numbers, I'm just like, crap, the Lakers are really good. Like they're just like way better than what their record suggests, particularly when LeBron, AD, and Rui Hachimura play and they start together. Those lineups are extremely good. But if I had to go outside of the Lakers, because that feels trite, I'll actually say the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, same.
They're a little, they have started to find an identity. That loss to the Pelicans was a very typical, like, hey, the Suns have really fixed. Nope, there they go again. But they do have Kevin Durant. They do have Devin Booker. The lineups with with KD, Booker, Grayson Allen, and Nurk are great. Beal is honestly a little bit like, you don't really need him. It's come or go. But I do think that they've started to find an identity, and that's what was missing for a long time with me. If they are able to get into a bracket that does not involve Denver, I legitimately think the Suns can make the conference finals.
Yeah, same. I feel like I've been pretty consistent in saying that I'm not too worried about the Suns for most of the season, and that I was optimistic about them. Even in the preseason, they've certainly given me plenty of doubt along the way, because they've had some moments there where you don't know anything that's going on with this team, whether or not they can turn it around. And somehow they're still here, and there's still a possibility of them being able to get past even the 6th seed. So I agree. I think they're a really good team that people are, to your question, sleeping on, but I still think that they're dangerous enough that they can make a lot of noise in the Western Conference. I don't think they can get past Denver, but other than that, I like their chances almost against any other team in the Western Conference.
That's going to do it for Locked On NBA for a Tuesday. Thanks to David Ramil for joining me. We'll be back with you guys again next week. Tomorrow, you can catch Nick Angstadt. No, I'm sorry. Tomorrow's Jake Madison, John Corrales on tomorrow's show. Then on Thursday is Pat the Designer and Nick Angstadt. And on Friday, you got Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat and Adam Mares from Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy the race for the playoffs. We'll be back with you on Monday to preview the NBA play-in tournament and NBA playoffs. It's right around the corner. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.